Hi everyone, welcome to this session. Today we're going to talk about the new era of no-code, low-code platforms, what it actually means, and how you can extend and build your platform that other developers will be able to work on top of it and build new applications on top of it. So a couple of words about me. My name is Vlad. I joined Monday around 2 years ago, and I'm leading the team which is responsible for building the Monday apps framework, actually the application framework for developers. Originally, I'm from Ukraine, from Kyiv, and in the past 7 years I live in Israel. And I love web technologies, and in all my career for the last 10 years I was in different positions, was building different platforms for developers, because I really believe that developers is one of the most demanding audiences, and building the product for us is a super challenging thing. A little bit about Monday. Monday is building the product which is a work management system that composes a lot of different building blocks like boards, dashboards, automations, workflows, and so on, and allows our customers to build anything, any workflow for their work. And most of the things they can build without any coding skills, like with drag and drop, but they also can extend their workflows with applications that they can build on top of the platform. So we have more than 100,000 customers from 180 countries. Around 70% of our customers are non-tech savvy, so they are using the system without having, knowledge in development and so on. And they rely on the platform for their day-to-day work. The company is spread all around the world. We have the headquarters in Tel Aviv, big offices in New York, Miami, Sydney, and London, and soon we're opening our first Warsaw site, which will be our first ever R&D site, which is not in our Tel Aviv headquarters. And some engineering numbers: 500,000 RPM on the peak hours, more than 25 million DB calls per minute, 8,000 pods in our production cluster, and 150 developers which are deploying the code every hour, every day to add more features and fix some bugs. So let's talk about the agenda, what we're going to do today. We will talk about no-code, low-code platforms. What does it mean? Why is it interesting specifically now? And the most importantly, how you can look at the systems and the products that you are working on and think how to build out of it the low-code platform, how to allow external developers to extend the system that you are working on. So why is low-code, no-code is interesting right now? In general, raise your hand how many people, if you ever heard what no-code, low-code means or worked with it before. Okay, quite a lot. So actually, you probably understand what is the meaning of it, but let's go over it on the definition level. So no-code, it's actually like the differentiation between no-code and low-code is not so much about the ability and need to write the code, but more about the persona that we're trying to address with our system. So no-code is built mostly for the non-developers, for business users who want with drag and drop just to compose some kind of the application that they need for their business needs, while the low code is addressing professional developers who want to focus mostly on building their business logic. And why the low in the low code, what the low in the low code means, it actually means that the platform will manage for you as much repetitive things as possible, like monitoring, packaging, build system, hosting, testing, CI/CD, whatever. So as much as possible, low-code platform needs to close all the repetitive things that all of us are handling with whenever we're building a new application. So why is it interesting right now? In the past 4 years, the market of no-code, low-code grew more than 5x, and right now more than 200 vendors are marketing their solutions as low-code platforms. And why is that? Is actually in the past few years, I think all of us felt that the software is moving forward super fast. It should be adaptive to business. Like if 10 years ago we could say, to a business user that sorry, this is how the platform works and you need to adapt to the software. Right now it's vice versa. Software needs to adapt to user. And low code allows you to move forward as fast as users and customers require. So there are a lot of companies which are doing the low code right now. Just a few names that I mentioned here: Salesforce, Slack, Atlassian, Monday, Shopify, Zendesk, Freshdesk, and many others who has the capability for external developers to extend their platforms. I will try to go today as much as possible to give the holistic view on how to build low-code platforms from different aspects, from product, from business, from user experience, also technical, we will try to think how you can make your product, the low-code platform, as those ones, and I will give a lot of different examples from these different platforms to give you the sense and inspiration how you can look at this. So the first step, the first thing that we need to understand when we're thinking about extensibility of the system is what actually we want to extend. So it's very much depends on the platform that you are working on, but just a few examples. So if you're building the BI kind of system that has dashboards which are showing some insights of the data, so the good example would be building and extending the dashboard widgets, because there can be a lot of types of data visualization that you can build on top of the data, and developers can always add more and more on top of it. It could be different types of workflows, different types of new entities maybe that you want to extend in your system, integrations, different types of views if you're managing tickets, anything that your platform and your business requires that you would see as an area of volatility in your system. You would see that you're adding more and more instances of the specific block. It's a good candidate to become extendable by third-party developers. So one of the examples, in Monday we have dashboards, and as I mentioned, widgets is a problem because we can think about millions of types of widgets, starting from the line charts, counters, battery charts, radar charts. Then we can think about presenting the data on top of the map, presenting the data in the way of Kanban view, millions of types of things, how you can show the data, and it's a great candidate that we can allow third-party developers to build on top of it. Another example is Slack forms. I think if you're using Slack, you probably used this before. Whenever you're sharing the presentation, it shows you this nice form that you can put the comments and choose the user that you want to share this presentation for. And almost every integration that Slack has, it has this kind of a Slack form. And imagine if Slack would need, to build all these forms for all the products that they have. This is the only thing that their R&D would do. And actually, it's also a great candidate that you can allow third-party developers, let's say in this case Google, build this form and made a good seamless integration between Slack and Google Slides. Another example is Zendesk. Whenever you're opening the Zendesk ticket, on the right you have the form, which is actually an app, and you can configure what you want to show there. And for example, it can be a CRM integration with some CRM system that straight from the ticket, you can click the button Create Lead, and it will create the lead in CRM system and connect the customer in Zendesk and in the CRM system. So what it actually means is that in one place, you can show the part of some application that was built by third-party developer, and will give the great integration experience for users. And even, let's go wider, browser. The browser that we're using is kind of the biggest low-code platform that we can think about, because extensions are actually the applications that third-party developers build. And whenever we're using browser, each of us have different set of plugins, and it's really customizing our experience and focusing on our use cases on how to use browser with plugins. So after it, we need to understand, when we understood what actually we want to extend and what we want to give the ability to extend, now we need to understand how we will do this. So we need to answer the question what each of these blocks can do, what will be the interface of communication between this block and our platform, what is the context that this block will work on. So it could be on top of the ticket, it could be global context like browser plugin, it could be a dashboard widget that works on top of some specific data source. So we need to understand, in which boundaries this block will operate, and what is the level of freedomness that this block can implement. So it's also very important to understand that from now on we are not controlling amount of features that our users has. So if until now we were saying that we have 5 dashboard widgets, from now on it can be hundreds or thousands, and different users will use different types of widgets or different types of views. So we need to find the user experience solution, how to allow our users to manage all these features and manage the platform, that it will be very customizable for the specific user, and not come to this famous example of this toolbar with thousands of buttons that's, you know, looks ugly. So one of the solutions that we came to is what we're calling feature stores. It's kind of a marketplace of features, like marketplace of dashboard widgets, that you can go and find the specific widget you want, and it has categorization, it has advanced search, it can have, you know, even recommendation system that will adapt to specific user based on the type of the user or based on the use case or previous actions that user did. So it's kind of, you know, like the solutions that will allow you to host infinite amount of features that your platform will have. There can be also other solutions like dynamic drop downs or something, but now like you need to keep in mind that this is the problem that you will need to solve. The second thing is actually we need to answer how the third-party developer will build these features. And see, here I see two main approaches. The first one is more of the like proprietary declarative way that the platform can allow me to build application, and this is an example of Slack form. So you can see this is kind of a JSON where I'm saying that I will have this and this type of field, and then 2 buttons, and one button will do one thing and another button will do another thing. This approach has a lot of advantages. First of all, it allows for the third-party applications to be pretty much consistent in the way how they work and what they do. And also it's kind of easy to implement it this way, but it also has 2 main downsides. The first one is that it's very limiting, so I actually can make only the things that the platform allowed me to do. And the second thing is making me a vendor locking. So if I've built this Slack form, I cannot just take it now and, you know, release this application in Atlassian ecosystem or in Monday or in Salesforce, because it's built in the specific way how Slack wanted it to be built. The second option is actually the one that we chose, is to allow developer to build everything, like with any language. Of course, if we're talking about web application, should be JavaScript compatible, but any language, any framework that they want. So give them the freedom of building whatever they want. And we really believe that in this case, it allows developers to build much more robust solutions and much, addressing the specific use case and needs of customers in much better way. Even though that it has the problems of consistency, for example, that you can solve with enforcing some design system and giving them components library and so on and so forth. And also, let's stick to this option for our next steps, because it's kind of more challenging to do, because the first one is clearer, like how to solve. So here, whenever we want to host the custom third-party code of a developer, it's more interesting. Okay, all good? Architecture, I have a single page application on the front end, some back end, probably some database under the hood. And why I'm calling this host application and host backend? Because right now it will hold and host third-party applications inside of it. So the most naive solution that we can find for hosting third-party code, let's just add the script tag into our page that will load the third-party application from some domain, and that's it. It will be able to be executed in our page and everything will be fine. But what is the problem with this? Is it's not secure. Every time when we're allowing the third-party developers to be able to execute their code inside of our platform, we need to understand that the code can be malicious. And in this case, this code will get access to everything. It will get access to cookies, to session, to our code. It will be able to destroy UI. It will be able to do everything. And usually this is not the level of freedomness that we want to give for third-party developers. So what we can do with this? We can wrap this script with iframe. I think all of you know what iframe is. It's a pretty well supported part of the standard way of hosting the third-party code inside of a sandbox, so this third-party code won't be able to access anything from outside. So actually we solved the problem of security, but now we have another problem. This code is fully sandboxed and it doesn't have any access to anything outside. And it's also the problem because for most of the cases we want that the application will have some kind of communication with our system and some kind of, you know, collaboration with what our system is providing and what our system is doing. So there is a solution for this as well. It's called post messages. It's actually the part of the standard which allows iframes to talk in a specific way with the application, host application that rendered this iframe. So it is secured because like it's exchanging the serialized messages between two window objects of the host application and of the iframe itself. And it can be a good candidate for us to build this kind of communication between the app and the host app. So let's try to think what are the types of communication that we would need here. So the first thing is that our app would probably want to get some kind of events that are happening on the platform. So new ticket was created, the state of the workflow got changed, something got deleted. So all these events, I would want the third-party application will be able to consume and do something on it. You know, re-render, do some reaction on top of the changes that are happening inside of the platform. And in the opposite direction, in some cases, the application would want to do something with the host application. So it would want to give some commands, execute some commands on top of the host application. It can be, you know, in some case, redirect user from one page to another. In some case, it would want to show some global, you know, confirmation dialog that will ask for user for doing something. So a lot of different cases, specifically, again, in different platforms can be different, but we for sure want to allow the iframe to command in some ways to our host application. Another very important thing is that we want, in a lot of cases, that this third-party application will be able somehow to call the API that our backend is providing. So what's the problem here is, as always, authentication. Because the iframe is inside of the sandbox, it doesn't have access to cookies or session or something. So it needs to authenticate with the API in some specific way. And there is an interesting approach for doing this. What we can do is that iframe can send a message through the post messages to the host application. We'll say, hey, I want to get to endpoint /boards or /dashboards. So the host application, because it controls the flow and it has the authentication through the backend with cookies or JWT token or whatever, it can get this message from the iframe and call the backend, get the response, and pass the response again with the message inside of the iframe. So iframe is kind of calling the API without really calling the API. The API is called by the host application. Why it's good? Because host application is holding the process and it can do additional authorization on what the third-party app can do. So for example, we can implement kind of scoping similar to the old scopes that app can declare, I want to be able to read boards and not to write boards. And then whenever the host application is doing the call to the API, it will be able to do additional validation if this app is authorized to do this API call or not. And by this, we're getting from one side a super seamless authentication, so app doesn't need to implement anything. And from other side, we're having the very good security control on what this app can access. And also, what we can do, we can build some kind of SDK on top of all of this messaging, because overall this messaging API is not so cool, and we can even encapsulate all of the complexity of this messaging to, for example, promises. So like we can have the method which will be called .api, and under the hood it will do all this message pass, calling the API, getting the message and passing it back to the iframe, but at the end SDK is just resolving the promise whenever the process finished, so the developers will not even see and feel all of this complexity. So for example, our public SDK, which is open sourced, has four main methods. Monday.api, which just returns the promise, Monday.get, Monday.listen to get the information from the platform, and Monday.execute, which allows you to execute some commands, some predefined set of commands that make sense for our specific system. And of course, in a lot of cases, the application would want to have its own backend for storing some data, for implementing some business logic or whatever. And they can also do this. They probably will need to have some kind of identity exchange between your platform and their own system. It can be done or with oath, or you can pass the user ID inside of the iframe, and they can use this user ID for their system as well. But overall, they can use, in this case, all the data that your host application is giving you, calling your API and calling their own API. So overall, we have the secured 1, 2, 3. You can still hear me? 1, 2, 3.
We can hear you.
Can? Okay. So in this case, we have the full solution, how the app can operate inside of our platform, and it will be secured and pretty powerful. 1, 2, no, okay. It's working? Okay. So another thing that we need to start looking at when we have this solution is that our API that our platform is exposing becomes a much more powerful thing. Because until now, until we have had this application plugin extension system, the API usually is used, you know, like for some kind of integrations, maybe for some solutions like Zapier and Tegromat. But now we have the whole new layer of developers which are building their apps on top of the API. And it means that from now on we need to start treating our public API as a product. And there are a lot of things that like a lot of things that we need to start thinking about in this case, but the most important one is the feature completeness of our API. I have a nice anecdote about this. When we just released the first version of the application framework, we've made a small hackathon with a few beta developers that wanted to build first apps. And in the first hour, we got a question, how I can subscribe a user to the dashboard with the API. And we didn't have this capability because until now we didn't need this. And there were a lot of features that platform is supporting, but they are not exposed via the API, which means that the app developers cannot really use it. And it's a problem, and there are a lot of different strategies that can be implemented in this case. There is the approach which is called API first, when every new feature that you're building needs to be supported by the public API first, and only after this with the UI. There are a few companies which are doing this. I think like Google is using this approach. It's a bit of extreme. We are actually like thinking about, you know, like we're supporting features with the API after we release them, but all the strategic features that we are doing, we are now planning how they can be supported via the API, so third-party developers will be able to consume them. And also a lot of other things that you need to think about. Rate complexity limiting, because now your API will be very much in use and developers can make mistakes and just write the infinite loop that will call your API, you know, like 500 times per second, and it can just destroy your system. So you need to have a very robust system of limiting. You need to think about performance and stability, about monitoring of your APIs, because in general now your API becomes even more crucial than the whole platform. So platform can be down, but the API needs to be up. And think about the development experience, how developers will consume your API, how they will explore it. The good example, we are using GraphQL, and there is a great GraphQL playground that allows developer just to go and play with your API and have the documentation built in. So it gives you like very good experience of checking what your API can do. There are also other solutions, good solutions for REST APIs, but it is crucial to give your developers an easy way to play with the API. And coming back to the beginning of what we were discussing, so now we've built the ability for developers to extend our platform, but if we want to call ourselves a low-code platform, we need to make the word low important. So we need to focus on making developers' life easy and give them as much infrastructure, as much capabilities for solving their repetitive problems as possible. So it could be a design system with the open sourced components library that developers can go, take, and use without the need, to choose what, like, one application is using Material UI, another is using Bootstrap. So you can expose for them the components library. By this, you are also solving the consistency issue of the application. So most of the apps will look in the way how you would want them to look. And also it solves a lot of, pain points of which components to use for your developers. You can think about giving them the ability of hosting their code. So like that, you can provide them CDN service that they can just upload the code and it will work for them. So they don't need to think how to use CloudFront or any other product. They don't need to pay for it. So you are giving them this as a service. You can also think about giving them the ability to host their server-side code, which is much more complex, but it actually can give a lot of value. So they also don't need to go to AWS or GCP or Heroku or whatever. And a lot of other things, service to store the data, version control, CI/CD, testing frameworks, a lot of different things that we would want developers to not think about and get for free from the low-code platform that we have. We also need to invest into examples of the applications, to open source as much as possible types of, how you can use this or that capability of the system, to have this like example apps repository, which is open source. Invest into SDKs, supporting SDK for JavaScript, for TypeScript, for Python, for whatever your developers would want to use. So it's important to start building the ecosystem. And also, super important to start building the community. I think all of us had the experience of going to some new framework or library, and whenever you have some problem or bug or something that you don't understand, you go to the Stack Overflow or to their community, and it's like dead. You don't see anyone there, you're asking the question and don't get any answers. Issues on the GitHub, are not getting answered at all. And this doesn't give you the feeling that you are, in the ecosystem, that someone can help you. So you have to invest into making sure that your community is alive, that people are helping each other, that you have some team which is focusing on this and making sure that community is really helpful for all developers and for all of your ecosystem. So if we will do the recap of what we just talked, we looked at what are the options that you can extend your platform with, how to do this, how these building blocks will work together with your platform, how you can build solution for this architecturally wise, how to make your API great, and how to make your developers happy. And actually, like, all of these points are very important, but it can sound a bit, overwhelming and scary. That's like all of these things you need to do from the day one. And of course not. Everything we're building, we can build step by step, agile, and you can even start thinking about, in the beginning, not to open this for external developers in the world, but this approach allows you to look at your platform in more of the abstract way. What are the things which are volatile and that I want to encapsulate in this specific way? And this solution, for example, with iframes, can be a good micro-frontend framework for your company, that internal developers can extend the system in much more organized way, so you won't have this huge monoliths, and it's creating the very important level of abstraction for your system. And as a next step, whenever it will work for you internally, for your internal developers, you can start exposing and give this framework for external developers all over the world. And I really want that you, from this presentation, you will get some kind of inspiration on how you can make the next level of the product you are working on and make it a low-code platform. So build it starting from Monday, and thank you very much. Do we have time for Q&A?
Well, yeah. Well, let's have one question at least. Well, there are several questions, so let's do it because we still have time. And after this, we will have lunch. So.